Hello, everybody. Welcome back. I'm the Strategy Professor, and today we're going to be doing a mid-tier list for patch 919. So, as always, if you enjoy the content, please be sure to like and subscribe. It really helps out a ton on the channel. Check out the rest of the content as well. I do have a support tier list already up. I did a patch notes video yesterday, and I stream every night starting around 9:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We also have lots of individual champion guides, coaching sessions, and lots of other stuff on the channel, so be sure to check all that out. And I will have timestamps in the description if you want to jump around to your favorite part. And I'll also have a link to this Google Doc that I'm going to be going over here. In this Google Doc, then I tell you recommended items, recommended runes, and I have a 1 through 5 rating system. 1 being the champion is one of the best at that task for a mid laner, or 1 is one of the worst, rather, and 5 is one of the best at that task. Honey, can you get her? She's going to freak out about these markers. So lane pressure is how much someone can get priority in the lane to set them up to roam, how likely they are to be able to poke other people out, and then kill threat is how likely is someone able to get a kill during the laning phase. Safety is how safe is the champion, particularly from ganks during the early game, and then scaling is how well does a champion perform over time. Then reliability is a combination of how difficult is the champion to play, as well as how many counters exist in the meta for that champion. Are they pretty good in most matchups? Okay, so let's go ahead and kick it off with Cassiopeia here. Now, a lot of mid lane tier lists are going to differ because mid lane, for the most part, is fairly balanced right now. I think that if you are good on, just like maybe one of the top 15 or top 20 champions, you can definitely climb. Some matchups are obviously going to be a little bit better than others, but I don't think there are that many like highly oppressive picks in solo queue that are going to squeeze out a lot of diversity. So overall, if I don't list it exactly in the order that you think it should be there, that's okay. You could probably have 10 different tier lists. They would be in a slightly different order, but hopefully I'm just going to give you some ideas about champions that I think are strong right now. So that if you can play those champions, you can probably gain some elo. That's the ultimate goal here. So the numbers might be slightly different, but I think a lot of people are going to agree about the strength of many of these champions. Okay, so Cassiopeia is kind of coming back in here. She was nerfed a while ago, but then she was rebuffed a few patches ago. I think they gave her E more damage. Yeah, that was back on the 14th. Well, they did the healing on the Twin Fangs back then was raised up a little bit, and then the cooldown was lowered a little bit on Miasma. So they nerfed her about halfway through the season here. No longer has a minimum cast range. Heal. Okay, this is where they changed the mana cost to it to make it a bit more affordable. And this is, I think they gave it some damage. The main transformation that's important to know here is that they nerfed her Q quite a lot over the last, really this season. At the beginning of the season, I think, was when she was super OP. She had like a 54 or 55% win rate. She was pick, ban, and pro. And when she has that high of a win rate in solo queue, there's a big problem because she's pretty hard to play. And any champion that's really hard to play that has much more than like a 51% win rate means that they're probably pretty imbalanced. So right now she's at about a 51% win rate. But a lot of kind of the best, like really hot, like difficult to play champions, like Sylas, for example, is like only a 46% win rate, and that's pretty standard for most champions that have a lot of potential. Okay, so what is it about Cassiopeia? Why is she good right now? So they nerfed her Q out and they buffed her E when they did that, and so she's kind of back to this phase rush build, which I wasn't a huge fan of at first. I really liked the Comet build on her, but that was much better for poke in the laning phase with the Q, and was the more OP build. But the phase rush build is still pretty good. The main aspect of that is you have a lot of mobility and fight, so that you're able to dodge skill shots easier than a lot of other champions. So you don't have like flashes and dashes, but you consistently can run people down and kite really well, and have the ability to sidestep pretty effectively. So she's going Phase Rush, Mana Flow, Transcendence, and Scorch, and then just Taste of Blood, Ravenous Hunter. So it's very similar to what it was before, but now you're just maxing E and you're going for Phase Rush instead of maxing Q and going for Comet. And a couple of traits, I mean, this has always been the case with her, but it's becoming a little bit more useful now as they've nerfed. A lot of the assassins are still really good, but they have nerfed some of the most egregious ones, like Akali has been nerfed. Sylas, I don't guess, would quite qualify as an assassin, but he's been nerfed several times. And then they've nerfed out things like Irelia and just other stuff that potentially would give her a bit of a hard time. So she doesn't exactly have a cakewalk against a lot of champs, but she certainly has a better matchup than she did maybe 5 patches ago, as several of those champs have been nerfed. Also, we are starting to see tanks come back into the meta a little bit. We're seeing Mundo is very popular in the jungle right now. Nunu's very popular and strong. We're still seeing some things like Volibear and Vi and things like that are going to be pretty popular right now in the jungle. So at least win rate wise, right? So a lot of the kind of the highest win rate junglers. Now they aren't the most popular yet, but they're starting to come back. Mundo is becoming very popular and he's getting banned a lot too. So she has pretty good game against those types of champions because she has really, really high sustained damage. More so than any other champion on this list. She can shred through those tanks. Now, yes, Mundo does have a lot of resistances to magic in general, but he's also going to be pretty strong against physical mid laners because a lot of them are bursts. There are no like sustained physical damage mid laners right now that you will commonly see. I mean, maybe someone could play something like an Ezreal or a Lucian, but by and large, everybody's going to have a hard time with Mundo. That's a mid laner right now. At least in trying to kill him later. And so Cassiopeia is going to be one of the better champs at that. It's because she puts out such an insane amount of damage. You can get a Void Staff and really carve through him later if you want to. So that's definitely a perk. She's also very good against mobility in general in team fights because of this miasma. I'll tell you, it is a real pain in the butt to try to get around her as Rakan. And as a lot of these kind of hard engaged champs, it can be difficult to get to her through miasma, and then she has a really good team fight presence with Petrifying Gaze. So if you try to engage on her, if she buffers the Petrifying Gaze, she can actually still cast it even if you CC her while she's in the animation. So once again, very, very good against Rakan. Both of these, miasma and Petrifying Gaze, are extremely good, and they're pretty good against things like Leona, Nautilus, Thresh, a lot of these kind of frontline champs. She's going to be able to lock them up, CC them, and just melt right through them super quickly with the Twin Fangs. So she is a little bit slower. She does have tier. She's one of the only tier champions that's going to be near the top of the list because in general I don't like tier, but she has really, really high base damages if she gets enough time to sit there and, drop all of her mana on somebody. So that's really handy. And then it's just very easy to last hit and power farm with her too. Because the Twin Fang refunds the mana cost if you kill the minion, helps you stack up tier like really, really fast. And kind of in that mid game, if you're able to push them in, she has pretty good wave clear. Then she can go and farm the jungle very comfortably because not only does she do nice AoE damage, but whenever she E's somebody with her Twin Fangs, then it heals her. And late game, it heals for quite a lot too. But even in kind of the mid game, then that means that you can go up and kind of face tank those raptors while you're poisoning and spamming Twin Fang on them, and you'll still stay relatively healthy. So she farms Raptors better than almost anybody. She takes Barons really quickly, Dragons really quickly, carves through tanks, has pretty good solutions to people that are trying to hard engage on her. You can outplay her and potentially get on her and kill her if you can play around her Petrifying Gaze as an assassin like a Qiyana or a Zed or something like that. But she has the ability to get you. It's really just kind of a skill matchup. Can you look away at the moment when she's going to Petrifying Gaze? So there is that outplay potential, but she also, it feels like she pretty much always has a chance to outplay you as well for the most part. So she forces a lot of skill matchups, and if you're really good on her, you can definitely make it happen. So I think she's going to be very strong right now. Like I said, first item's a bit slow, but she can kind of make up for it. She gets a faster second and third item because she farms so well. And if she just gets 1 or 2 kills, and it's sort of off to the races, and it's going to take multiple people to kill her. Now, she doesn't roam very well, so that's kind of a drawback. If you're against somebody else who can push really fast and roam, like a Talon or something like that, that can be a problem. You can take Teleport to help out a little bit, but by and large, you're going to be very slow, and it's going to be fairly unsafe for you to split later on. Depends on how good you are, but you're not going to be able to run away, so you're just going to have to outplay like 1v2s if you intend to split. So she's slow. She can't get boots early. She doesn't have like any sort of dashes, so that goes against her. But if you're good on her and you just stand and fight people, then you have a pretty good chance to take out almost anybody. Very, very good at team fighting too. So high sustained damage, pretty reasonable disruption in CC and fights. I think she's just overall a very, very strong champion right now. Okay, Qiyana's the next one that I want to mention here. Now, Qiyana has received some nerfs, but Most recently, she still had 60% win rate in pro, and I don't think she's received any nerfs since 916. So very, very good in pro, good at the top end. And I think if you practice enough with her, then you can make her work even at lower elo brackets. So part of what, although there's a big discrepancy, as you see, kind of the masses only have like a 48% on her, but then top end players are going to have like 56%. And a lot of it is just, she's just weird. Like, you have to get used to chaining her stuff together, doing the combos correctly. I'm not very good at it myself, but I know that when I see the Qiyana doing that stuff right, she's very difficult to deal with. She's got a little snare if you use the river element. She can push back and CC entire teams against walls with her ult. And that's really one of the big differences between her and some of the other AD assassins out there, like a Zed or a Talon, are that she has 2 different dashes and she can CC multiple people in team fights. So, and she has a low cooldown ult too. So it's only 120 seconds. Now, I think that Talon and Zed are also around that time. They might even be a little bit shorter. The Akali nerf is one thing that's going to help her out a ton, because Akali's ult is now 160 seconds. So she has a massive window where she can try to outplay Akali again. And she just has really good scaling and just really high ratios as well when you put everything together. I mean, like this Edge of Ixal or whatever with the Elemental Wrath, like bonus damage, just doing just a ton there. You have good utility. You get dealt extra bonus damage against champions that are below 50% if you grab terrain. You have the invisibility option if you want to, get up to people and make sure that you're going to be able to close that gap. And then, like I said, she also kind of has that root for 1 second. So it's really the thing that makes her special. She has the double dash, so that makes her pretty safe in the laning phase. She can get away. And I think her dash is on a pretty short cooldown, too. Yeah, it's 7 seconds here. I think that's her dodge. Reduced to blah, blah, blah upon gathering an element. Or is it? I don't remember if it's her... it might be this one. Like I said, I'm not a Qiyana expert. I know this one is definitely a dash. That's towards a fixed unit, though. But I know that she has 2 different dashes. I think it's Audacity, and then it might be... Terra. Okay, yeah, this is it. 7 second cooldown. She dashes towards the location. It's hard to see just how far that dash is. I don't think there's any way it's an 1100 dash. It might be a 300 dash. I don't know. But either way, good gap closer, good escape from things. She has the invisibility if she has a brush element as well to help her escape. Now, usually when I play against a Qiyana, I usually play Cassiopeia whenever I have to play middle. But I've played against Qiyana a couple of times, and I feel like she usually doesn't use the grass one. I feel like more often than not she uses the river or the terrain one. But either way, lots of utility, but very difficult to play. Huge burst damage. If she gets on you, she can close the gap. She can escape. She's just really pesky, and she's got low cooldowns. That's really one of the kickers is, on this mobility, this starts at 12, goes down to 8. This one's always 7 seconds. And then this one's 7 seconds. So she has a ton of uptime. Versus if you look at the mobility on some of these other champions, like if we look at like Zed or somebody like that over here, I think his escape, isn't it like 20 seconds or something at early levels? Yeah, it's 22 seconds going down to 14, and he only has 1 escape. So Zed is on the list, and Zed is pretty strong. But I think that's one of the really big things, too, is she just has so much uptime. Like, it's difficult to punish her because she's going to have her dash up again very soon. And so she can take trades very often, and she can play really aggressively and just hold one of those dashes to escape if the jungler shows up. So she just has a ton of uptime there. And then the big one is that she can pin people against those walls as well. Like, she could hit an entire team against a wall. And it's a very good combo as well with someone like a Jarvan who creates that terrain, or like a Trundle or something like that. Trundle's probably not going to be as popular, but I suspect Jarvan is. Jarvan's already pretty popular, and I think he's going to have a huge presence in Pro over the next month or so. So I think we'll be seeing more of him. But yeah, if you just Jarvan dunk people and then just use that terrain thing around it, you'll automatically stun anyone in that terrain, and then anyone that's even around the edge of the terrain is also potentially going to be stunned. Now, I don't remember how long the stun is. 1 second. And she's just good. High uptime, high mobility, high burst, pretty good CC and utility in team fights. So I think she's still going to be very, very strong, even though once again, the stats aren't going to necessarily going to make her look that way right off the bat. Electrocute, Sudden Impact, Eyeball Collection, Relentless Hunter, and then Biscuits and Time Warp are kind of the standard that people are going to these days. I think it's because they want to get boots early. If you're a mage, you want to get Sorcerer boots early because that's a huge damage upgrade. So you don't want to go footwear. And then they've kind of nerfed most other things. I guess you could go for something like Triumph and Alacrity or something like, or Triumph and Coup de Grace. But I think they've already nerfed Coup de Grace several times as well. Sadie, get off that. Just get down. And then I think a lot of people go Tiamat with her to help her out with wave clear a little bit faster, and then Ghostblade, Dustblade. I'm not 100%. Yeah, most people are going Tiamat on her. This gives you a little bit more burst, but most importantly, it's just to push waves so that you can potentially roam a little bit more. And a lot of the AD assassins mid, they get to kind of cheat the curve a little bit, like Ghostblade and Dustblade are 2,900 gold versus something like Luden's, I believe, is 32 or 33. So a lot of the assassin items come online a little bit faster than many of the AP items, unless it's a champion that uses something like Proto Belt. So that means that you just have a little bit more of a window to start asserting your dominance and getting some kills. And, the penetration, getting those components with Sari to Dirk is very, very nice early on. Like, the components give you actually a ton of damage. Like, everything that builds into those items is damage, versus with Ludens you're paying a lot for mana, which is good at like allowing you to stay in lane over time, but it doesn't do anything in like an all-in burst fight that's going to be done in less than 3 seconds. So you're paying a lot as you build Ludens. You're paying a lot for kind of that managing the wave with mana, but you're losing out on just raw damage that you would get off of going for the AD items. Now, one downside to running something like some of these AD champs as we move on is that it could create imbalance in your team. So you need to make sure that you don't go all AD. If you have like a Kha'Zix jungle and top lane Renekton, you may not be able to play something like Qiyana middle because that would give you 4 AD, and that's just too much. So I think it's really nice if you play these types of AD assassins like the Qiyanas, the Zeds, the Talons, those types of things. You need to be able to play a mage as well, just so that you can switch it up if your team goes all AD. So yes, if they don't have a proper tank on their team, maybe you can get away with an all AD team if you're really good, but just the enemy buying something like Ninja Tabi and a Chain Vest can just ruin your day for your team. Because that Chain Vest, pretty much every role can do something with Chain Vest, right? You can turn it into a Zanya's, I believe. You can get Arm Guard if you don't get... I don't think that Zanya's has a Chain Vest, but you can get Arm Guard with that. You can do Chain Vest into like GA later. There's a lot of stuff that most roles can do to at least get an armor item that's okay, that's not too far either way to get like one armor item plus Ninja Tabi. So don't give them that option. Don't go super heavy AD if your top and your jungler are also AD. You need at least one AP threat. Okay, Zoe's another one. Now this one might surprise people a little bit because we haven't seen Zoe in a while. But I think she's really sleeper, very, very strong right now. I don't know if OP necessarily, but I think that she's very good. And a part of this has been the change to a lot of champions in the mid lane recently. So I think we'll see Zoe at Worlds. It's kind of like Qiyana. She just has a lot of uptime on her abilities. And so she's just full of threat. There aren't many windows to punish her. Her Q goes down to a 6.5 second cooldown. Spell Thieves is pretty much always up. Sleepy Bubble Trouble does have kind of a long cooldown, but really a lot of times if you're sort of fed as Zoe already, then you don't even need to hit the bubble to kill him. And then of course your ult ends up being on less than a 10-second cooldown as well. So she's just really abusive. I mean, because she has opportunities to kill you from like over a screen length away if she's really using her R appropriately. So it's just such huge one-shot potential. She can just keep pounding you with that stuff over and over again. She has pretty decent poke in the laning phase because she can throw her Q for the poke, and she can just auto-attack you with more sparkles just to do some guaranteed damage. And she does have 550 auto range, so that does outrange a decent chunk of other mages out there. I think like Taliyah has 525. Ori, I believe, has 525. A lot of the mages are only going to have 525 in the middle. And definitely the melee champions, your Qiyanas, your Zeds, your Talons, those types of champs, she can auto-attack in the laning phase with more sparkles. So She's just good. I mean, it depends on what you're going to get off of the Spell Thieves, but, sometimes some of those items she picks up can totally turn it around if she finds a Proto Belt or a Redemption, or gets like a heal or something off of one of those. It can be very, very strong. So, yeah, people are just pretty familiar with her. The thing about her is she just, like, late game, she just rains on you, with those Qs, and she's just eventually going to hit them. Like, she's so good at sieges, because she's just relentless with those Qs. If she ever hits, like, a long-range Q or a Sleepy Trouble Bubble on anybody, they're probably going to die. So, she is difficult to play. You have to practice her. She does have some vulnerabilities against assassins, so... someone like a Qiyana, if you can dodge that bubble, flash it or something, then you can get on her and murder her. So she is somewhat vulnerable to assassins, particularly before she gets Zanya's. But I think that a good Zoe player can potentially play around it. She's pretty dang good against things like Cassiopeia and other mid-range mages, I believe. Things like, going to be very good against Orianna, Cassiopeia, Syndra, Malzahar. A lot of these kind of mid-range champs, she's just going to be able to outrange. So if you can't get on her, if you can't lock her up, and she just gets to do her thing and just chuck Qs all day, then eventually she will take your team down. So I think Electrocute, Taste of Blood, Eyeball Collection, Ravenous Hunter, then Dematerializer and Biscuits. And then you just want to get those Sorcerer Boots and the Oblivion Orb ASAP, and then after that, people usually go Ludens and Zanyas. So... I think she brings a lot of poke power to the lane. I think she's one of the best kind of long-range poke mages because her poke is a one-shot. It's basically on a 6-second cooldown. So if you're interested in range, if you have a team comp that really wants to siege, then she's going to be quite good. So if you have a mid lane that can kind of protect you and peel or just like zone off really well, then she's going to be a good complement to that. Okay, let's go on to the next one. So Sylas has received some changes, a lot of changes over the course of the season. He has been nerfed fairly recently. Hey, what's up, Osman? Thanks so much for the sub. I appreciate it. But I still think that he's going to be really good. I think he's going to be pick ban in pros still, even after some of those recent nerfs to him. So they nerfed Petricite Burst. I think it was LS or something, kept calling it like Predicate or something. I don't know. I feel kind of bad for LS. Sometimes he calls things like Aatrox and Predicate, and I don't know. Maybe that's just the snooty English professor in me, but it's Petricite Burst. Now, I think this was... It's mostly just going to hurt his wave clear, but if you look at these chains, he still has a hell of a lot of wave clear. Some magic damage, non-champion detonation damage. I still think it's pretty good. Now, he does do reduced damage to minions. I'm not a Sylas expert, but I just think he has too much utility left in his kit. I still think he has it. Like, he still gets this up to 2 seconds for 4 seconds, up to 2 stacks. Next basic attack does AoE damage to everybody, so he still has AoE on this and his Chain Lash. He still has this Kingslayer, which, can still heal him for 270 heal. And if they're below 40% health, it still does 300 damage with 100% AP. Like, these numbers are still just absurd. Like, the magic damage shield is 100% of his AP. So definitely against mages, he's still going to have some big game. So he can kind of engage with this. He's got a self-heal that also does a ton of burst damage to people that are below a certain threshold of health. He still has these chains, which is very good, just AoE damage in team fights, and also does pretty good wave clear on minions and monsters. And then, of course, he's got his ultimate, which is kind of like one of the best utility spells in the game. Just steal the enemy's ultimate and get really good ability power ratios with it. So there are a lot of champions that have good ultimates that are getting picked right now. So you're almost always going to have 2 or 3 champs that are going to be solid, like Cassiopeia, Qiyana, Zed, Malzahar, Taliyah. A lot of these champs are going to have really good ults that he can steal. So I still think he's going to be spooky. He just has so much resilience. He has so many different options for itemization and runes. The ones that I found that I recommended for him are Conquer, Triumph, Alacrity, Coup de Grace, and then Biscuits and Tonic. But I saw several people also getting Aftershock, which can help you out against those all-in assassin types of matchups. Because if you just hit your E on them, then you're basically going to be unkillable in the mid-game. But most people do go Conquer because you can stack it up pretty quickly with your abilities. I think Chain stacks it twice. So yeah, just overall, and he has a unique itemization path because all of his stuff it's on kind of a longer cooldown, but it also doesn't cost that much mana. This goes from 50 to 70, and then this over here is like 65. The ult's only 75 mana. So he really doesn't have to get a mana item early, and he can get Proto Belt. So that means he cheats the curve, and he gets like his high impact item at 2,500 gold instead of 3,200 for most people that are going to be getting Ludens. So he comes online a lot faster than others, and he can afford to get utility items like Zanya's really early because his base damage is so high. Most other champs have to go double Spell Pen, and then usually Ludens, because they have to get the mana management, and they need the spell penetration so that they can actually kill people. He can kill people without having to get the spell pen, and so that means he gets the utility of Proto Belt, gives him the health, gives him the extra sort of mobility to get in their face to get that Kingslayer off. So I think he's very good. And then the Zanyas helps him out, especially against some of these delayed damage mages, so things like Zed, things like Talon, stuff that has very predictable damage where you can Zanya's a lot of it. So he just has a lot of outplay potential just around the board between Kingslayer, his different stuns and shields that he gets, his ultimate, and just so many different kinds of like runes and items he can buy. I think he's still going to be very, very strong, even though they did nerf his wave core a little bit with Petricite Burst. He may not be played in the jungle as much, I don't think, but just his flex nature in pro, sometimes that matters in solo queue, especially at the higher end. Just the fact that he can be flexed mid, top, or jungle is still going to make him very, very powerful. So I expect him to be virtually pick ban the whole time. Like his play rate in 916, if we look at presence, he only had a 49% win rate, I think. 46% win rate. So it wasn't like insane, but he was still played quite a lot. So I expect that trend to continue. Okay. And then finally, Zed is the next one that I want to put in there. So you're not going to see Zed in pro, and he is banned a lot in solo queue, so keep that in mind if you want to try to learn him. You're going to have a plan B a lot of the time. But I like him because of his target selection. Because he can get to that back line pretty much always. He's going to find a way to get there. He can get in, kill one of the squishies, and get out with his shadows, typically. So I think that sets him apart from a lot of other champs like Talon, which is why I don't have Talon up the list. I know a lot of people in Challenger probably prefer Talon to Zed. I'm not sure which one has a higher win rate. I think Talon does, actually. And I'm not an expert in either one of them, just full disclosure. But I just feel like when I see Zed, that there's just like more of a chance that he's gonna stay relevant throughout the whole game versus Talon. If he kind of falls behind, he does have some target selection. He can roll in invisible and get on that back line. Actually, Zed has a much, much higher win rate. Zed has 59%. And I think it's because of this. Like, he just has the mobility. He has the outplay potential. With his shadows, he can get around. He can dodge so many skill shots. He can go in, kill somebody, get out. He can go in, get out, and then go back in. Like, there are just so many ways he can zip around because he can switch twice. He can use his normal living shadow to trade places with that, so to like jump forward and then have the ability to go back out. And then he can also use his Deathmark shadow to go in and go back out. So a really good Zed player. It's so hard to follow him and predict what he's gonna do. And he has the potential to just dodge everything. And he has just really, really good scaling. I mean, if they're below 50% of their max health, he gets bonus damage on them. The shurikens do 100% bonus AD. I mean, that's pretty high on these things. And remember that when those shadows come out, you can throw multiple shurikens. So I'm pretty sure this can hit people at least twice and potentially 3 times. It says that I think he can be hit by multiple ones. Zed and his twin shadows throw their spinning blades in the target direction, each dealing physical damage to all enemies they pass. They're reduced to 60% beyond units of the first. So I think that's each shuriken deals reduced 60% for each enemy beyond the first that's hit. I'm not sure if it reduces subsequent shurikens by 60% or not. So, like, if you get, your living shadow and your deathmark shadow, and all three throw the shurikens at the same person, and they all hit them, and that's the only target they hit, I'm not 100%. I think that would do the 660 damage with 300% bonus 80 ratio. I think it only gets reduced if each shuriken goes through multiple targets. Now, are you going to do that? Are you going to be able to live the dream and hit all three shurikens, in traffic without hitting anyone else first? Maybe not. But I think the potential's there. And even if it is reduced to 60%, that's still going to be like 500 damage with like a 200% 80 ratio. So it's just a ton of damage, and he has nice wave clear too. It is reduced by 60%, but the fact that he can spam this and doesn't have to get a mana item is really, really nice. And then, of course, you have your escape with Living Shadow, so you can play forward in the lane, play a little aggressively as long as you keep your shadow up. Now, this cannot hit multiple targets. Enemies hit by this are slowed. They take no additional damage. So you cannot hit multiple targets with Shadow Slash, but you can with Shuriken. And then the Death Mark, 120-second cooldown. Pretty much going to kill somebody. Now, one thing about this and why he's not slightly higher on the tier list is there are a lot of supports right now that can outplay the Death Mark. So, like, Janna can shield somebody. Rakan, in particular, is extremely good against Zed. That's Zed's worst nightmare, is seeing a Rakan. Because, Rakan can activate his R, then go in with his E, shield the person, charm you, knock you up, and then you're not going to be able to cast any of the spells after your R is activated. And you're probably going to die before you can get back out. So, Rakan is a nightmare. You might actually, I don't know how bad certain Zed matchups are middle, but if I played Zed, I would definitely consider banning Rakan. I say that as someone who plays Rakan all the time. So, don't ban it if you're playing against me, but ban it if you're playing somebody else. But yeah, I mean, so there are some outplay potentials with shields and things like that. But, Rakan's not going to be in every game. Janna's not going to be in every game. And so he's going to be really, really good. I mean, he's great against things like Leona and Nautilus because they're just too slow. Like, a lot of times he can dodge their stuff, and he's going to get on that 80 carry and just pop them before the Nautilus or the Leona can do anything. So, very good, very high mobility, very high single target burst. Doesn't have a ton of utility, doesn't have any stuns or anything like a Qiyana, which is why he's a little bit lower down. But his ability to get on that back line and get to any target he wants to get around the Mundo, get around the Nautilus, and get in there, murder the 80 carry, and get out, I think is what makes him one of the better 80 assassins in my book. So just Electrocute, Sudden Impact, Eyeball Collection, Relentless Hunter, Transcendence, and Scorch is where I'd go with him. Okay. Moving on, I think that was it for our Tier 1. So moving into Tier 2 here. So most of these are pretty difficult to play. In fact, I'd say all of these are on the difficult side to play. So you definitely want to practice them before you play them. And then we have a couple more that are a little bit easier to play, like Malzahar and Ahri. And so you could argue that these should be higher up in Tier 1 just because they're so reliable. But I just think right now as a mid laner, it's just very, very skill-based a lot of times. And so you need to be able to practice and just get proficient on like the very high skill cap champs that can potentially 1v9. But Malzahar is still going to be very strong, and he's very reliable. I would say he's going to be really solid, especially if you're auto-filled mid. So if you usually support or something like that, and mid's your secondary, he's going to be a pretty good choice. So he has a ton of utility in his kit. Of course, he has his point-click ultimate. It's 2.5 second lockdown. They can't get out of it with cleanse. They have to get Quicksilver Sash. The support can't get them out of it with Mikhail's. So, very powerful. They did nerf the cooldown a long time ago, so it starts at 140, so it's okay. But it's not going to be as low as some other options out there. And he also has wonderful wave clear. I mean, you just push in so fast, so hard, and you get really good mana management with Malefic Visions and Void Swarm. Now, if they do have some kind of AoE and they kill your Swarm, that's pretty frustrating. But overall, that's going to be nice. And then you do have your silence, which is very, very good in team fights. That 2-second silence later on can just be completely devastating for people. And he's very similar to Cassiopeia in that you can very comfortably farm things like raptors, so you can push in and go take the enemy raptors or wolves or whatever. Just go for that 300 CS victory condition if you have to, because your little voidlings can tank a lot of the damage. So you can still maintain a pretty healthy life total while you're also farming everything on the map. And he can roam really well. So that's one thing that sort of separates him from Cassiopeia, is he pushes really hard, he has great wave clear, and he can roam, has excellent point click lockdown kills. Awesome for junglers. You know, if you have a jungler duo, you just basically flash in, combo them, ult, and then they're dead if the jungler's there pretty much every time. So, very, very reliable. Now, the most common runes on him are going to be Ahri, Mana Flow, Transcendence, and Gathering Storm, Footwear, and Dematerializer. I've tried out Predator, and I think if you push and you think you can go to side lanes and roam really well, I think that Predator could work. I don't see any like really top-end Malzahars getting that, but it gives you a lot of mobility, especially if you're going for a lot of, just trying to power farm. I mean, sometimes even just like pushing a side lane and then predatoring and like showing up to a fight that's about to break out mid lane, just using it just to like rotate and get back to lane faster. It's on a pretty low cooldown. So I think that's good. People like Ahri because it gives you more poke in the laning phase, gives you more power in the laning phase, but I think, especially lower elo brackets, if you're under diamond, I really wouldn't, I don't know. Unless you're really, like, doing a ton of damage with Ahri first, and you're either killing them or forcing them into bad backs, I might consider something else. I might consider Predator. I don't know what else is common. Most people go for the Ahri. You could also try Comet if you want to. I just feel like this is pretty anemic. I don't know. I've never really liked Ahri on champions that don't also have some sort of like shield or some sort of scaling with it later on. This feels very, very lackluster, but sorry, I was taking a drink of water there. But this is what most people do. So Ludens, Rylai's, and then Leandri's. Now you can proc Ahri multiple times with your E, so that is pretty helpful later on. Potentially. Okay. But yeah, he's just going to be your super push, reliable roamer. Now, Taliyah is a little bit less reliable, but she does have more uptime. She doesn't require her ult for an all-in. You can just kill him anytime if you hit your knockup. And she's still going to have really high burst damage. A lot of people have been sleeping on her, for a while. After she got nerfed out of the jungle. Now, she's still getting played mostly in the jungle, is what I see a lot of top-end players playing her. But the people who do play her mid are finding a lot of success on her. And that doesn't necessarily mean that us mortals, that aren't challengers will also find success on Taliyah. But it just means that the possibility is there, that you can do it, if you learn the matchups. Now, it's a low sample size, only like 40 games. But I wouldn't be surprised if we start seeing her a little bit more in response to some of the assassins getting dinged a little bit at the higher elo brackets, most notably Akali. But yeah, I mean, she does a ton of damage. She's got, like, her Q. If you hit all of your shards on somebody, the numbers are just, like, eye-popping. Like, 510 base damage with 135% AP ratio. It's just nuts. That's so much damage. And the Seismic Shove is so useful because it can peel for your team, and it can also, hard engage. Now, it does have long cooldowns, and that's something that, kind of a lot of these Tier 2 champs are going to have, is they have long cooldowns and long windows of vulnerability. Longer windows. And some of those top-end picks like the Qiyana, Cassiopeia, Zoe, who are pretty much always locked and loaded. So you got to play around that, and then this has a pretty long cooldown too, Unraveled Earth, but if you hit it, if you hit the combo, you're going to one-shot people. Now, that keep in mind, this is longer, but it's still not like 120 seconds, right? It doesn't require an ult. Every time this little combo is up, every time Seismic's up, you have a chance to one-shot. And it has really good range, too, of 900. So that outranges a lot of kind of these mid-range mages that are like 800 range or so on a lot of their abilities. So that's really handy. Then, of course, you have Weaver's Wall, which allows you to rotate the side lanes and also block off people. So if the enemy team has champions that don't have some kind of, like, dash to get over a wall and their flash is down, so, like, the bot lane is something like Jinx Nautilus, and you see your teammates ping that flash is down, you better go down there with Weaver's Wall pretty soon, because that's a very, very easy double kill, because they can't get across the wall. So it's even better a lot of times than something like a Rise ult or a TF ult to get down there, because it's going to completely block off their escape routes if they don't have flash. And a lot more of those ADCs like Jinx that don't have flash are becoming more popular. Kai'Sa doesn't have a flash or a dash to get over it. So, you know, if they're Lucian or Ezreal or something like that, yeah, they'll be able to get around it, or like Rakan. But just be aware of that. Just watch those flash timers when your allies ping them, and just think about, okay, that champion has no escape. I'm just going to go kill him with Weaver's Wall. And you should see a lot of opportunities for that. So, she's very good. And she gets around the map really quickly, so that makes her, like, doubly good at roaming. Now, I think that this Q, it only does damage to the first target hit, I believe. So she does not have nearly as good a wave clear as she used to. Although it's still, like, it's decent. It's just not, like, instant, like, insane wave clear like she had back in Season 8. But she's still going to be pretty strong. So I would do Electrocute, Taste of Blood, Eyeball Collection, Ravenous Hunter, and then Biscuit and Time Warp Tonic, and then just double pin Ludens pretty much on most champs that are Magic champs in the mid lane. Okay, Ahri's next one. Now, Ahri is someone who's just kind of like a solo queue warrior, especially if you're under like Platinum or something. She's still pretty good at Plat. She's abysmal because I just think that her damage is too slow, and there's a lot of outplay potential for her at sort of the highest levels of play. But she can still be pretty good at lower elo brackets. So if we look here, you know, she's only got a 48% win rate, just bad matchups against a lot of things. But her numbers are pretty solid if you look at them. They're not as eye-popping as some of the other ones out there. She's very, very reliant on hitting this charm, which is 12 seconds. If you don't hit the charm, you really don't have a lot of options. Foxfire is really short range. Her Q is decent range with a decent cooldown. So you have to hit them with both to do the 280 damage. If you only hit them with one part of the Q, it's only 140. So if you're tapping them at max range and getting a double tap on them, then it's pretty good. But otherwise, it can be a little rough to get that off. And then the Spirit Rush, you know, does pretty good damage, maximum single target damage, you know, 360 with a 105% AP ratio. 130 second cooldown, so not the craziest thing out there. You know, very cooldown reliant, kind of long cooldowns on the engages. Not guaranteed that you're going to 100% them if you charm them. It does do extra damage, and if you do have, you know, an item advantage on them, you'll probably kill them, but there are chances for the enemy to get out of that. But yeah, I mean, she's just got a lot of mobility with her ult. She's got 3 dashes to reposition, take a shot at charm, you know, land a couple of deception orbs. So she can be pretty good. It's just her numbers are just not as eye-popping as they could be, and her AoE is okay, but it's not as good as some of the other options out there. So I just think she requires, you know, a bit more in terms of itemization out there, and she's just going to have a bit less, like, consistent threat in the laning phase. But overall, she can still be very strong. She's one of the highest win rate mid laners out there because she is so safe. Yeah, mid win rate. So yeah, she's one of the highest mainstream wins that's going to be out there. So she's okay. You can play her. You can definitely win some games with her. Renekton. Now, Renekton is kind of a weird one that has come up just recently. And we'll probably stop at Ekko here, and I'll just mention kind of these last ones. I didn't do a tier list for the tier 3 ones because I just kind of ran out of time, and I wanted to publish this tonight. And it takes a long time if I haven't done a mid-tier list one in a while to do the research and go through and make new documents and everything. But on the next patch when I do it, I'll add the tier 3 ones in there as well. But Renekton has sort of arisen as this like lane dominant bully to try to counteract a lot of these close range champs. So things like Qiyana, things like Akali, things like Sylas are going to have a pretty hard time with him. I would say Ekko's probably going to have a pretty hard time with him. So he's seeing more and more play in the mid lane. I would expect to see him at Worlds as a counter to things like Sylas, like Akali. He has a flex pick too, so he can be played top or he can be played mid. I've seen him in the jungle before, but I don't think it was that good from what I remember. Yeah, so he's got a 59% win rate, but keep in mind, it's a pretty small sample size. He's kind of picked as a sort of a niche counter pick. But yeah, as you can see, he's picked against a lot of melee champs, so like your Sylas, Yasuo, Pantheon, Akali, Kassadin. He murdered Kassadin, Qiyana. So I wouldn't blind pick him, but he can definitely throw down. So why is he so good, you may ask, against these melee champs? Well, he does a lot of damage and has a point-click stun, pretty much, and it's very hard to kill him through his ultimate. And specifically, Spear of Shojin has made him very, very powerful lately. So if we go through and just look at him real quickly. So he's kind of like the tank option mid. If you want someone who's kind of like a tank that also does pretty good damage and is a bully, then he's going to be your pick there. So this had been taken over by, in the past by champs kind of like Irelia or Aatrox middle. Now Renekton has picked up that with this kind of relatively new Shojin build. He's sort of taken over the mantle as melee assassin, worst nightmare mid lane. So, of course, he generates Fury every time he does damage. His Call of the Meek is really good wave clear and actually sustains and heals you up if you have enough Fury over time. Then the Ruthless Predator is a huge one, too. You can stun somebody for up to 1.5 seconds. And the thing about this is that he attacks 3 times. So I'm pretty sure with Spear of Shojin, if you have that active, each one of those attacks lowers the cooldown on all of your other abilities. That's a triple lowering of your cooldown. And then every time you hit them and lower the cooldown, you're increasing your Fury, I believe, a little bit more as well. So I think that's why he's so OP with that item, is because Ruthless counts as 3 attacks. And it resets your auto attack timer. So you can attack Ruthless, 3 more attacks, and then all of your abilities are going to be off cooldown again, basically. So you're going to stick to people so hard if you just slice in, Ruthless Predator, slice back out, and you just get a ton of cooldown reduction all across the board. Has a pretty low cooldown ult, gives him a pretty good chunk of health early on, does extra magic damage. So he's just a really brutal lane bully, and he's pretty good later on in team fights too with the Shojin build, because once again you're just going to have so many dashes, so many stuns, so you can very comfortably get on that back line, use that Call of the Meek to heal up a little bit, and eventually build into some more tanky type of items. So I believe these days he's going to rush Shojin and then probably Black Cleaver. He's kind of gone off of the Tiamat. They used to have to get Tiamat to cancel the animation on your W, but I don't think you can cancel it anymore, and so people have stopped going Tiamat. And they're substituting that out for this Spear of Shojin. So yeah, it's just Shojin, Black Cleaver, and then I think just things like Steric's Gauge, GA. I don't think you would want to go something like Death's Dance. I think most games you're just going to go Shojin, Tier 2 boots, Black Cleaver, and the game's probably going to be over by the time you get to that point. But if you do need one more item, then yeah, either Steric's or a GA can work. So he does fall off a little bit late game. He can, be kited to an extent. It's harder to kite him if he has Shojin. And kind of like the other AD mids that I mentioned earlier, it is risky because, you're picking an AD mid, and if you have an AD top and an AD jungler, it's going to be a problem. So he's a good counter pick. He's a good counter pick if they pick a melee assassin mid, which is really popular right now. And he's good against either one. He doesn't really care that much if it's AP or AD. You can get Hex Drinker too, I think, if it's AP and you're just really getting busted up, but I think you don't usually have to do that. Usually you're the one doing the busting. So pretty good options, because you can go Tabby or Mercury Treads, and yeah, he just doesn't have to go anything special, so that's handy. Because you got to remember that a lot of these matchups, these AD assassins mid, like the Qiyanas, the Zeds, the Talons, a lot of these champions are getting stronger by default because they're nerfing the magic resist, or they're nerfing the armor rather, of a lot of champions middle. So that's something they just nerfed about Sylas. They just took off 4 AD or 4 armor off of him early game. They did that with Kassadin. They took armor off of him. With Irelia, I believe she only blocks magic damage. I think she only blocks magic damage with her W. And then with Sylas, he only has a magic damage shield. Kassadin only has a magic damage shield. So they're trying to like really open up the door for AD assassins to have very good matchups in the mid lane against AP sort of squishy champions. And so yeah, the Gator can come in and just put the chomp on him if you need someone that's going to hard counter, especially AD assassins. So you just go Conquer, Triumph, Tenacity, Coup de Grace, and then second and Wind and Revitalize is what I see commonly on him because he can heal off of his Q. And then just a defensive boot, Shojin, and Black Cleaver. And after that, it's situational. And then finally, Ekko. So Ekko has been getting a lot of buffs, but... And he can be really good. There's just a lot of opportunities for the enemy to outplay him. He is pretty good against assassins, too, because his ult, can reverse a lot of their damage. And so he does have a lot of outplay potential with that. I'm not sure if we're going to see him, at Worlds or not. But in solo queue, he's all right. It's just, like, he can't really, like, force plays that easily. And, his trading in lane is a little more suspect. Like, you do have pretty good wave clear with your Time Winder, but... You just don't have a lot of, like, very reliable poke. Your parallel convergence is very good for team fights, and if you get the stun on people, and you can close in. So if he gets ahead, he definitely can run people down and, like, get kills, but I'm just not really sure how he's supposed to get ahead all the time. Like, your Chrono Break is really defensively. Obviously you want to be using that a lot of times. Or, like, they have to walk into the shadow and not be paying attention. With parallel convergence, they have to not be paying attention a lot of times to get hit by that, or they have to be CC'd by somebody else. So it's just like, I feel like there's a lot of outplay potential for the enemy, but if you do get ahead, you have crazy AP ratios on your Z drive, you get a really big shield off of parallel convergence, you get to heal a lot off of Chrono Break, so you do have lots of resilience, especially against assassins. And you do have the potential to do, like, pretty decent sustained damage off of your... triggering your passive in team fights on a bunch of different people. So, you just want to go Electrocute, Sudden Impact, Eyeball Collection, Ravenous Hunter, Dematerializer, and then Time Warp Tonic. And then he kind of like Sylas has a build that allows him to get stuff cheaper, so he can kind of cheat the curve a little bit with Protobelt, Lichbane. Then Deathcap is more expensive, but just your ability to get that early Protobelt means that you can have a business item ready to go while everyone else is still trying to build towards their Ludens. So he's pretty good. He's a decent like anti-assassin option there. So it's just I feel like he has to be ahead to really dominate, and it's hard for him to get like to make that happen because he doesn't have an ult that you can just like spam on cooldown like Qiyana or like Zed to try to make a play and get kills. You have to really be sort of patient and calculating to make it happen. But he is one of the hardest champs in the game to stop when he does have a kill, just because it's so hard to kill him. Or when he does get ahead, I should say. Okay, last couple of honorable mentions here, and then we'll call it a day. Yasuo, I think, is still really good, particularly against ranged matchups. Everybody knows how annoying Wind Wall is. It's just, my problem with Yasuo is he's so dangerous. If you get camped, you can get baited so easily with him into a fight, and then the jungler shows up and you're dead. You just have no way to... You pretty much have to turn around and kill them both. And that's tough because you don't have a lot of healing. You only have one shield. And you just can't really mess up that much. You have to hit everything. You really need to be able to hit that tornado and, get multiple targets. Now, he does become a lot better if you have other knockups on your team. So you have a Rakan or an Alistar or something like that. Malphite. The Malphite Yasuo Wombo combo is legendary. So he does fit really well with other champions that are popular in the meta, like the Malphite, like the Rakan. And he definitely can win, especially against some of these other melee matchups. It can, you have some potential there, but his matchup against Sylas did get a bit better with like the armor nerf on Sylas, but he still has his Kingslayer. He still has his chains. He can steal your ult. Although, I don't know, how would he knock somebody up, though? Oh, he can grab... I think his grab... I'm not sure. There's a lot of weird interactions with Sylas. I'm not sure when you grab him with Abduct. I think there's a slight, like, bump knock up there, but I don't know if you can, like, use your ult after you do that to trigger it. I'm not sure. So I feel like he definitely can win. It's just a bit more conditional. There's more counterplay, and he's just going to be a bit less safe than some of the other champions out there. Now, Talon is one that, once again, he's kind of like... Zed or Talon. You know, which one do you want to play? They compete for the same type of thing. To me, it's sort of like Brand and Zyra in the bot lane, right? Like they're both, you know, very good at what they do to an extent. You've got your long range poke, you've got your AP, similar itemization, similar roles on the team. I just prefer Zed because he's a lot more mobile. You have way more outplay potential, and you can get in and get out. With Talon, whenever you go in, yeah, you can get on that back line with your invisibility, but you're probably going to die after you do it. You might be able to run away, like, and jump over a wall, but it's a lot scarier to do it. And you can be ganked in the lane. You know, if you're going for an all-in and that Rakan shows up from bot lane, or, you know, the Nunu comes rolling in with a snowball, like, you're probably going to die, you know. Versus with Zed, I feel like more often than not, there are going to be chances for him to get out. So I just like Talon or Zed a little bit more than Talon, but Talon definitely can work. I think Talon has a higher potential to get pre-6 kills than Zed. So I guess if you snowball really early, that can be useful. But yeah, I mean, he roams faster than Zed too. You know, he can jump over walls and get really sneaky ganks on people. So, you know, Talon is good at what he does. You know, he pushes waves quickly and he can roam and put pressure on side lanes. So it's really strong. Zed can kind of do that too. Not quite as well, but Zed's going to have better target selection in team fights and a little more safety. So this kind of depends on what you want. Fizz is someone that people like just love him on these like tier list videos. Like I watch, I watch several tier list videos typically, but like I don't remember which one. It's like Pro Guides or I don't remember which one, but a lot of them put Fizz up there near the very top, and I don't really understand. Like he is pretty good, you know, like to some extent, but he has no poke whatsoever. He has virtually no wave clear. You know, at the very top end, he doesn't have a high win rate. At lower brackets, he does. You know, his wave clear, he would have to use his E, his Playful Trickster, which that's very dangerous to do that. So he has virtually no poke. He relies on a skill shot very heavily for his all-in. If he doesn't hit the fish, it's really hard for him to all-in people. The fish does have counterplay to it also, you know. Someone can dodge it, they can flash it, they can just hourglass it, potentially. So, and it gives, like, the Janna or the Rakan or whomever, like, time to shield and protect you in team fights if someone gets fished. So, I don't know. There's just a lot of outplay potential. It feels like he just does not have the poke or the all-in kill threat that some of these other champs do early on. I guess he is really mobile for an AP assassin, and there aren't many that are like that. Like, Zoe is kind of an assassin or a poke type of champ. Ahri sort of mobile, but she can't dodge stuff. He can dodge a lot of skill shots, so and he does have really good matchups against certain things like Veigar. You know, he can jump the cage, or just anyone that has sort of like a targeted ability or some kind of skill shot that he can really dodge with his E to outplay. So I guess, you know, that potential is there, but it just feels like he's very single target oriented, and it's hard for him to get in there without just trading kills. A lot of times he doesn't have to get in and get out. And I feel like his cooldowns are pretty high. Like, he has to have Playful Trickster, and I think that's like around 12 seconds. So, he's okay. I just think, for me, he just doesn't... He just, like, focuses too much on single target. He can't do that much to other people. Versus someone like Qiyana, you know, can potentially kill multiple people in a team fight, and she has that ult with the potential stun on everybody. You know, you could argue that he's similar to Zed. I think that Zed, however, does have even more outplay potential than Fizz does. I think that Zed comes online a lot faster with less items than Fizz. So, I don't know. He's okay. I just feel like there are probably better options, but he is one of the better, like, mobile AP assassins if you want that. Okay. Akali, I've got her down here. I still expect her to get seen at Worlds. I still think that she is very strong. The biggest kick for me, I think her damage is fine. It's just she needs her ult, and it's 160 seconds. That's crazy to me. You know, when you have champions like Qiyana that are only 120, Zed is 120 or less. Like, pretty much every assassin is going to have lower cooldowns than that. So, she has a lot of potential. Her first item is very expensive, Gunblade, and you really need Gunblade, but you are very strong when you get it. It's just the issue is I believe Gunblade is it's either 3,400 or 3,600 gold. I think it might even be 3,600. And when you're facing, you know, a lot of these AD assassins are going to be, you know, getting their Dustblade or their Ghostblade or whatever at 2,900, that's going to be a problem. You know, they're going to get their item like maybe 5 to 8 minutes faster than you. So I don't know. They did give her back some damage on this patch. She can still has the potential to 1v9 if she gets really far ahead. She doesn't have any stuns, any utility. She just has kind of raw damage and mobility. So she definitely has a lot of potential, but I would still probably rather have one of the other ones for most normal people. Maybe for like, pros, she's still going to be really strong, but she's definitely tapered off. She's definitely tapered off a little bit. Now, she is kind of a flex pick, too, so that's nice. You can play her top, you can play her mid, so that's handy. But I think that 160 seconds, because she needs to snowball, you need kills, and I just don't think you can get them without your ult most of the time. So I think tier 3 is probably fair. And then Kassadin's another one. Now, Kassadin is someone who can become, completely unstoppable once he gets a couple of items. Particularly once he gets to level 11 and he can start jumping around more often, then he can be really strong. My problem with Kassadin is that he is vulnerable to AD assassins, and there are a lot of those that are very strong right now. And he takes a long time to come online. I believe he still gets tier. He kind of has to have tier, and often he'll get rod as well. So that's double stacking items, and I just feel like it's so slow. Your wave clear is really suspicious, early on. People are going to be able to push you in and out-roam you. You can't really do anything pre-6, so he is good once he gets going. I just think it takes a bit too long, but if your team can help you get there, if jungler camps for you or other people are doing really well and they let you get back in the game, then I think he can be strong. Okay, anyways, that's going to be it. Thank you very much. Hopefully you enjoyed this. If you did, please be sure to like and subscribe. It'll help out a ton, and I'll see you next time. Have a great day.